Another week of football is upon us. As you can see, Florida State is in town right now. They're here to play some football. I know I'm excited for it. Anyway, so last week was one heck of a week. This week, still a pretty good week, but not quite the same as last week. But a pretty good lineup that I'm looking forward to. A couple games that I'm really anticipating right now. Yesterday we already had a pair of pretty good games. Number 22 Temple beat a pretty decent ECU squad, 24-14. I think ECU is 4-4 this year, but they had to replace their senior starter Shane Carden, who last year threw for 4,736 yards, 30 TDs, and 10 picks. And I think they lost a couple other of big, wide receivers who were seniors last year. But they had a really powerful offense last year. They put up 70 points against North Carolina, and last year. And this year they're in a bit of a rebuild, but still a pretty reputable win. Not a gimme at all. So Temple ranked at 22, still rolling. And it seems to me that they earned their spot. Also last night on the West Coast we had the Cal Bears, who were ranked somewhere in the 20s, I think 23 or 24. They went into UCLA and just got completely throttled. I think the final score was 40-24, if I'm not mistaken. I know it was 40-16 at one point, and I just stopped following. Yeah, I was, I had a, obviously, Captain Hindsight here. I knew UCLA was going to win, but I had a feeling UCLA was going to win that game. I was pretty surprised by how much they won. So big game, big win for UCLA. I know that they had a, they were struggling a bit, losing Miles Jack, and at the same time, a tough loss for Cal, because they're really going to start going into the meat of their schedule, and they really needed this one. And they, I don't even think it's that they didn't show up. I'm just, Jared Goff is a solid QB, has a lot of potential, but I just don't. I don't think Cal is a top 25 team. I mean, they proved yesterday that they weren't. So, top. They're not a cupcake by any stretch of the imagination. They're definitely a solid squad, but I just think at this point in time that they're they're just not quite there yet. So that's on my hair. I have that one. I don't know why. Every time I do these videos, I have one hair that's just out of place. But whatever. I'll leave it there. Maybe that'll be my trademark. So yesterday, we had a pair of good games, or one of them was a really good game, and the other one was a bit lopsided, but still pretty interesting for its implications. That halftime show was pretty good. If you haven't seen it, you should Google it. The Cal and UCLA bands collaborated to do a reenactment of the fall of the Trojan Army. The Cal band dressed up, in red and gold, and UCLA bands kept their traditional colors, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. Probably the most interesting part of the game, But anyway, so tomorrow we have a couple of games that I'm really looking forward to. At 3:30 we have Tennessee, who is right now they're 3-3, 1-2 in the SEC. At Bama, who is ranked at number 8, 6-1, 3-1 in SEC play, with their sole loss at home to Ole Miss. Bama is coming off a big win at Texas A&M last week, 41-23, and 10 had a bye. But their last game was at Georgia, where they had that miraculous 38-31 come from behind victory, which still, I think that being here in Georgia, I still hear people, calling for Mark Richt's head, for that game. Even though they won against Missouri last week, there's still a lot of people who still are, you know, they're not on the big fans of Mark Richt, but that's been kind of an ongoing thing for quite some time here. Mark Richt has been, there's the people who like him, and then there's the people who've just been calling for his head every year. So that loss to Tennessee certainly added fuel to that fire. But I think this is another rivalry game, big rivalry game. Tennessee has lost 9 straight to Bama. They also have that 11-game losing streak to Florida, so they have a pretty substantial losing streaks to their 2 main rivals. I'm sure that they really want to end. They already lost their chance to end the Florida one, which they really should have ended that. They really should have won that game. Obviously, I got to give credit to the Gators for taking advantage of opportunities that Tennessee and Butch Jones provided them, but that was Tennessee's game to lose, and they did everything that they needed to do to lose it. But tomorrow, Bama is a more mature squad. Their program, Florida, with two. Well, you had at that game was a redshirt freshman starter in Will Greer, and just a pretty inexperienced team in general, inexperienced O-line. Whereas Bama has a lot more experience on both sides of the ball. Obviously, I think this is Coker's first year as a starter, although he's been floating around for a while. He was on FSU as Jameis Winston's backup when they won the title in 2013. Jake lost out to Blake Sims last year, and now he's a starter. But he's had some time in that system, and he had some time just around the block. Jacob Coker, even though I guess he's technically a first-year starter, he's been around the block, so he's not redshirt freshman. He's not quite as inexperienced as Will Greer was, and also, Alabama is replacing, lost Amari Cooper, but they still have some weapons in Kenyon Drake and Henry. So with that, their front seven, Alabama's defense is just really stout. I just don't see Tennessee winning this one. I know they had a really big win against Georgia, but this is Alabama we're talking about here. I think that the Tide is going to roll. I predict somewhere between like 10 to 17 points. I think it'll be, Tennessee might keep it close for the first half or so, maybe even a bit in the third quarter, but I think that, for the second half of the third quarter on to the end of the game, Bama is just going to pull away. So that's my prediction for that game. Then at 7 o'clock, we have number 15, Texas A&M, who just dropped the game to Bama last week, going into Ole Miss, who lost to Memphis last week. They're 5-2 in the season. It's tough to say. The both teams obviously looked pretty vulnerable last week. Ole Miss's offensive line is really, really suspect. They're not getting Chad Kelly enough time. He's looked good against teams that, Vandy and the other teams that they were, able to overpower, but against, Florida and Memphis, they got, that offensive line just got, slapped around, and, even against Vandy, they weren't particularly impressive. So, I think A&M, Bama is playing really hot right now. I think that, when isn't Bama playing hot under Nick Saban? But, that was a tough loss to Bama last week. They showed a lot of heart. They were down big early, and then they picked a couple comebacks. The final wasn't particularly close because of some turnovers, but I know that, they did show something to me. And I think that, that loss to Bama was not as deflating as the loss to Memphis. And not to take anything away from Memphis. Memphis was a good squad. I just think that it was not as bad of a loss. So with that said, I'm leaning towards A&M. My first thought was, Ole Miss at home, maybe Ole Miss. But the more that I've thought about this game, the more my gut is leaning towards Memphis. I'm sorry, Texas A&M to come away with the road victory. So, and then at 7:30 we have Utah, who's 6-0. I mentioned in my last video, I think that Whittingham should be the coach of the year, or he's the coach of the mid-year at least. Going into the Coliseum, USC is 3-3 with 1-2 in Pac-12 conference play. Losses, they had losses to Stanford and a loss to Washington, which was Steve Sarkisian's last game. I didn't see their game against Notre Dame last week. I know that they lost. They had a bit of a lead, and then they lost it. I thought that they had a solid shot at beating Notre Dame, but clearly they didn't get the job done. And I have a feeling that they're not going to get the job done again this week. I just think that Utah is playing really well right now. Like I said, Whittingham is having a career year. He's probably going to be fielding many opportunities elsewhere. So with that, I'm leaning towards, I think Utah is going to win by like 7 to 10 points. And finally, as you saw, the last game that I'm going to even try to go to this game if I could get a decent ticket, is going to be number 9, Florida State, who is 6-0. 4-0 in conference ACC play, coming into Atlanta to play the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who are 2-5 and 0-4 in conference play, winless in ACC. Florida State is coming off of a pretty solid win over Louisville, 41-21, and Georgia Tech lost a close one last week to Pitt, 31-28. Tech has lost 5 straight after looking like world beaters the first 2 games. They started the year ranked, I think, at like 13, somewhere between like 13 and 15. I think they're going to come out. There's a lot of Noel fans here, so this is a really big game. And I think that, I haven't really been following Tech too closely, but I know they've had quite a bit of injuries, and that's definitely contributing to their 5-game losing streak. So I think they're going to come out to play pretty hard tomorrow. Probably keep it close for a half, but I think it's going to be similar to Florida State's game last week. I think Louisville kept it close at the half, and if I remember correctly, they even had a bit of a lead at the half. I may be wrong on that, but I know they were definitely not out of it by halftime. It was definitely a game, but then in the second half, Dalvin Cook took over. The Noles, just ran away with it, and I think it's going to be a similar outcome this week. I think that it's going to be I don't think that Georgia Tech's defense is that run defense is that stout. I think that Dalvin Cook is going to have a career day, and I think that Tech might keep it close in the first half, but in the second half, I think that the Noles are going to pull away. So with that, I'm going to